Hello, this is Doug Greathouse with Sales Site, and I'm here with Loren Zamora, and he has a Facebook group called the 210 Tribe. How are you doing today, Loren?
Dude, I'm doing great. I'm pumped to be here.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself and the 210 Tribe and what you do.
So I'm a pastor and as of last May, a entrepreneur as well. You could say I've always been an entrepreneur because we started a church, and that's a different kind. Maybe most people would label that as an entrepreneur, but it's a church startup. But I got bored in COVID. So around May, I partnered up with a friend of mine to start the 210 Tribe. And we help Christians, we help believers launch online courses and maximize their God-given potential and even create a full-time income from that.
Oh, awesome. So I have some rapid-fire questions just to get to know you a little bit better. Do you prefer pancakes or waffles?
Dude, I had to pray about that question. I saw
that.
Wow. I don't know. I'm gonna have to continue to pray because there's pros and cons. Like the syrup is beneficial to have like the waffle, but because it kind of holds it better.
Mhm.
But for butter, it's so much difficult on a waffle. So it is the great dilemma of my life. Like I do not know how to answer that question. Like,
Wow.
I can't give you a definitive answer.
Yeah, you've just made me question everything.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm going to, next time I have a waffle, I'm going to be like, I probably would rather have a pancake.
Right.
Or vice versa.
Right.
So I know you're in California. What's the best thing to see or do in California?
Ooh, man, so you probably you Google it and you'll find some stuff, but here's something I could add that maybe you won't find on Google. It is kind of a best kept secret for me. It's in Humboldt County, which is in the Northwest region, like going up towards Oregon. I don't live close to there. It's actually 6 hours away. But when I was a kid, we would take our biology field trip there. And it's this place called Patrick's Point State Park. It's home of the tallest trees in the world. And it's also where they filmed Jurassic Park.
Oh,
a lot of Jurassic Park. And it's got a special place in my heart, but beautiful trails. Like I love outdoors, hiking and all that. And it's right on the ocean. And it's just beautiful. So Patrick's Point State Park is kind of a hidden gem in my opinion.
Nice. I'll have to check that out when I go there. Favorite Christian book other than the Bible, of course, that you've ever read?
That was also a hard question, but what popped up is actually a book I have in my hand right here. It's called The Beautiful Resistance, The Joy of Conviction in a Culture of Compromise by John Tyson. So we've been going through this with our church staff, and there's been tears in the conversations after we read a chapter and then come together each week and just see what God's speaking to us through it. And it is kind of a gut check. It's a heart check. It's a punch in the gut. And reality that we're off in a lot of ways, and we're often quick to point the finger and like, look at all these things that are messed up, but it's all here in ourselves too, that we need to check ourselves. So highly recommend that.
Probably especially pertinent to these times that we're in right now.
Yes, that's what we're realizing. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the best way to spend 30 minutes of free time, I know as entrepreneurs, and I know we're all busy, but what would you see as the best way to spend 30 minutes of free time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I have this life hack that works for me personally. It's everybody has their own way to decompress, to recharge. So I've found, like, so often I've entrepreneurs, we're super busy. We're probably lack sleep. That's probably pretty common. It might be an assumption, not based on data, but I'm just assuming that a lot of us don't get enough sleep. And so, but I also enjoy the outdoors, as I mentioned. So here's what I do. A couple years ago, I got one of those portable hammocks that compacts into like this, and you can just string it up anywhere you go. And so I'll go for, maybe you can't quite do this in 30 minutes, but I go for a hike because I love that, but I'm also tired. So I'll go for a hike, set up my hammock somewhere along that hike in the middle of nowhere, because I have to drive a little bit. more. So not quite 30 minutes. And then I'll just rest, take a little bit of a nap, and then wake up and finish my hike. Super life-giving. That's the best way I recharge.
I love being out in nature myself, so that sounds really good to me.
Yeah.
So I have a few questions about your entrepreneurial journey. Can you kind of tell us about where you started and kind of where you are now, just a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, definitely. So I kind of alluded to this when you introed it a little bit. Like I was here, it all started from boredom that came from COVID. Like, so I was a pastor, I've been still a pastor on staff. And we were portable church, set up and tear down, and I was pretty busy. But March happened, March 2020, and we moved our church online. And there was an adjustment phase where we were figuring out how to connect with our church, how to serve our church. But the reality was, I was trying to find ways, and I did find ways to serve our church. But the reality was, I just ran out of stuff to do. There just wasn't a lot to do. And that probably was a very healthy thing for me to figure out, because I just got bored. That's the simplest way to put it. And so actually I was like, man, there's just got to be a better way to use of my time. Like, I already watched Tiger King and that got old. And I was like, what else do I do with my life? What else do I do with this extra time on my hands? I'd probably do it put it to something that's beneficial, right? And so it was actually, the start of it was purely like, I want financially based. Like, that was the goals, like get to some financial goals, create a side hustle for myself, because I got extra time and I could probably figure some stuff out. And so what happened is God used that and twisted it and brought me into something even better. And so I was looking into like just being a marketer and like learning how to do Facebook ads, and then get paid to do Facebook ads for companies. Like, there's a lot of programs out there that'll teach you how to do that. So I was looking at investing in one of those and learning it pretty much from scratch. I knew a little bit about marketing, but I was like, yeah, this could be a good use of my time and get to some financial goals for our family. So I reached out to my friend Alex, and because I knew he's part of our church and I knew he does this. He does Facebook marketing. And I was like, hey, would this work? Could I like pay you to teach me instead? And he was talking and he said, you know what, you could totally do this and it will totally work. So like, basically he was just encouraging me to do it. And so I stopped I was like, okay, I was, a few days I was praying about it and said, maybe I'm just going to pull the trigger, invest in this training to help me get there so I could, make some money, purely financially, motivated, just say it like that. And then he reached out and he said, hey, but I'm also, a few days later, he's like, hey, I was thinking about our phone call. I'm also working on this endeavor of mine and I'm shifting my focus. This is Alex. He said, and my desire is to build a community and truly serve believers who are trying to grow their business and walk in the God-given calling that they have. And as in that phone call, I just started like finishing his sentences and saying like, dude, I'm really passionate about this. I'm really passionate about people finding their purpose and not just like going to their 9-to-5 and, getting a paycheck, paying the bills and getting through life. But there's a bigger picture, and God's giving people specific gifts for the purpose of serving other people. And so I just started like going on a rant literally while I was on the phone with him. And I'm like, oh, I think God's in this. But let me double check and like sleep on it, pray about it. And that's how it all started. I called him back, like, let's do this. Like, I'm super confident and I know God's in this. And so what started out as more of like, hey, let's get some more income. And I wasn't thinking about like using the gifts besides just like my willingness to learn for this project. But it turned out to be like an opportunity for me to use the gifts God's given me. I believe he's given me the gift of encouragement. And I've just been able to do that with so many different entrepreneurs that are also believers, and bring in scripture to their business and bring in faith and how you incorporate your faith in your business, simply put. And then it niched down to specifically launching courses, which has been really fruitful for us as well.
That is super awesome. I always think God's plan is always greater than our plan. We can map out our goals and everything else, but then God gets involved and he's got so much better forest planned out. And that's just amazing. And I also found in my business that when growing, you reach out to more people, you're able to spread God's love.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. So,
Yeah.
So you went from being bored to now I imagine you're swamped because I know you're in the process of releasing a book, you're a husband, a father, a pastor, and you're doing this course creation. So talk a little about that. How do you balance your time now?
Oh, that's a great question, man. Like I said, you're really good at these questions. I think a practical thing besides just like try to figure it out. It's kind of my initial reaction to it. I don't know. I'm figuring it out. But one thing that has served me well is have days for certain things. Like I've been a big, and maybe even a more practical thing that someone could take away from this is a book I recommend called Free to Focus by Michael Hyatt. He's a believer, not necessarily, I don't think he would say it's a Christian book. I think he might have mentioned like refer to the Bible in there, but it's a very practical and put it into place instruction. It's like, it helps you. It's a tool to help you. The concept is you clear up space and you divide your time to where you can be most effective and most efficient. And so for writing a book, I've blocked out time to do that. So it talks about different ways to do that. And just ultimately a big takeaway from that was getting into like looking at all the things you do and you're responsible for. And he's like, you either have to like anything that's not in the, what is it called? The desire zone, like right in the sweet spot, anything that's matched up with something you're passionate about and that you're gifted at, like anything that's not in there, you try to automate, delegate, or eliminate. So that might be the biggest help that anybody out there is like, man, how do I become more efficient? Is check out that book and then try to think about those. Look, like one of the things he says is look at all your tasks you do in a week, all your responsibilities, and which of these are in the sweet spot for you. Which one, and by that he means, are you passionate about it? Do you like enjoy it? And are you good at it? And everything else, try to automate, delegate, or eliminate. So that's my best. But I'm still figuring it out, honestly, man.
I think we all are in a lot of things. Yeah. So in the Christian community, there are conflicting views on growing wealth. Can I get your perspective on that?
Ooh, that's so good, man. I've grown a lot in this, and here's probably the limiting belief I had about money. And I think a lot of Christians interpret parables and teaching and this mindset of dying to self as they somehow, however they conclude. I think I've heard the narrative taught even, or just picked up in the culture, the mindset is that Christians are supposed to be poor, like monetarily poor. And I do not believe that's true. And I don't believe that God, that's their desire. But we can also, so we know that the love of money is the root of all evil. Doesn't mean that money is, but desiring that, making that an idol is. And because I think one of the ways we picked up this idea that like, oh, God wants me to be poor is from a passage I got to recently preach towards the end of last year on the rich young ruler. You probably know this story of this young man who was balling out. He was rich and he came to Jesus and he's like, hey, I just want to make sure I'm going to heaven. What do I got to do? And Jesus said, hey, will you keep the commandments? And he listed a few of them. And the rich young ruler was like, great, I'm good to go. Like that means I'm good. I've done all of those things. And then Jesus said, okay, well, there's just one thing you lack. All you got to do is sell everything you own and give it to the poor, and then you're good to go. And as we know, the rich young ruler walked away with his head down, devastated. And that is not because he had a lot of money. So that's easy to conclude, like, okay, and because even Jesus said that it's more difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. So you're saying it's impossible. And then so often though, we leave it right there and we miss the thing that the point of it, which was Jesus saying, well, what's impossible for man, God makes possible, is possible with God. And so often we just read that. And so what he's saying is you need God. Like he was trying to do it by his own merit. He was trying to say, yeah, I've by his own righteousness. And going further into that concept is the people of Israel looked at riches and they equated it to righteousness. Because remember in the Old Testament, Job was a righteous man, and he was probably the richest man we know of in that era. And so they were saying, man, Job, riches equals righteousness. And then the pendulum swung the other way, as we saw, as many believers, I've seen the culture develop that's, man, you're supposed to be poor. But Jesus preached on so he says it's impossible to be, so that's just the way that could be twisted. Mm-hmm. He's not saying that you can't do it on your own, enter the kingdom of God with you have riches. So it's all about the condition of your heart. But to flip it the other way is that Jesus preached on the parable of the talents, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, like, there was 3 guys, one of them, didn't do anything with them and just brought, said, hey, I had 10 and now I still got 10. And one of them said, oh, I spent it, now I don't got anything. And then one of them, multiplied it. Mm-hmm. And we often think like the talents is like our talents. Like, we're good at like woodworking, or we're good at like yo-yo tricks or something. Like, I'm talented. And we're supposed to like make good use of the gifts God's given us and the strengths. But a talent was a currency in that era. Mm-hmm. So Jesus was literally preaching on investing and growing your wealth, growing your money, because ultimately money is a tool. But there's so much caution. So it's not like one's right, one's right. I mean, they're both wrong, but you don't just throw both concepts out like, oh, money, because there's so much caution about money and how it can corrupt and how it can corrupt our, because the loving money, that's the root of all evil. That's what corrupts our hearts. So if you see money as a tool and you maintain to place God above everything, including your money, and you give generously, he will bless you. And there's a way to do it. There's a way to have wealth. Mm-hmm. And I think people have just made a belief that it's not possible to have wealth and honor God. No, it absolutely is. And that can be a major tool for the kingdom of God. And so I think if we started to shift that and stop, it's really a limiting belief in thinking that you can't be a Christian and have money. But you also shouldn't throw out the caution that scripture puts in there. So those are my thoughts. I'm glad you asked, because I actually have a lot of thoughts on Christianity, faith, and wealth.
I agree with that. And the more wealth that you gain, the more wealth you can give to your church, you can give to the poor, to give to causes that are in God, that would align with God's will. So yeah. So tell us a little bit about your goals.
I like that question too. I mean, my goal right now is for like me to finish this book. That's a major goal for me. I have a lot of, like, as you mentioned, I have a lot of moving parts right now. We are in the process. In October, we moved into this building, which has been a blessing. 8 years. We've been portable, setting up and tearing down. And this last October, we moved into the building that we've been in the process of purchasing, renovating, and moving into for almost 3 years. And so that has been a huge, taking a lot of time. So there's like a lot of goals we have with our church. But there's this immediate goal for me by March 1st. My book is releasing, so I'm finishing up that in the next few weeks. For our business with our clients, we want to serve 20 people by June, 20 new clients that we're helping launch full-time courses, or launching courses that generate a full-time income. And but man, those are just goals. I don't know if that's really helping anybody. The biggest thing, just to comment on like the idea of goals, because I think about these things often, and like, what am I measuring? And kind of like at the end, because this is a lot about what my book's about too. Like, what are we measuring with our life? And, like at the end of our life, what's going to be fulfilling? Is it going to be more money? No, absolutely not. That stuff's going to, monetary, physical possessions, they're not going to fulfill us in the end. But one of the things I want to define my life, talking about big goals, is this statement, that the people that know me the most respect me the most. So that all comes down to like, am I growing personally? So I have a lot of these goals that I want to get to, but man, I do have to come back to like, hey, am I growing personally? Am I growing in my character? Am I growing in the fruits of the Spirit? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. Am I growing there? So as much as I do like making these, I have to remind myself to like make it my goal to grow, because if I'm not doing that, then all those other things are meaningless.
Nice. Let me ask you a few questions about the course creation business that you have. So COVID has thrown a lot of businesses for a loop. Do you find that that's affected your business? Have more people been coming wanting to create courses?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're new into we're still new. But I think, the stat we throw at people is that in 2015, Forbes predicted that in 2025, that the e-learning industry would be a $325 billion industry. And COVID obviously has exponentially grown that. I don't know what Forbes predicts now, but I would imagine it's doubled, maybe even quadruple that. So I guess to answer your question, it's not hard to realize that the world has moved to the online space in this last year, or has dramatically increased moving to the online space. So yeah, it absolutely makes sense right now. It doesn't take a lot of people like convincing that it makes sense to launch an online course right now, because everything has dramatically increased, utilizing what used to be in-person things for an online digital experience. That just has happened in so many ways, including church, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. So yeah, there's a huge opportunity. And I think there is somewhat of a window. That's why we're encouraging people to everything has a curve and like a peak.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe we're on the upward slope of that curve. That if you kind of get in now, it is kind of like an investment you want, or a building market you want to get in as soon as you can. So yes, I have absolutely seen the flood of people coming to want to start a course, and there's job security in it. There's plenty of people that need that. And so yes, it's cool too, because I didn't, think about it, but it all lined up to like make sense. Like, yeah, this is a great place to be for an opportune time. And it's cool to see people, jump into that.
Nice. So tell us a little bit about why it's beneficial for someone with some expertise to launch a course.
Oh, dude, I could spend a lot of time telling you that. That's a great question, man. But like the biggest reason for me, like you could talk practically of why it's an efficient way to do it, kind of like what I was just saying, like everyone's online. But the biggest thing for me is about calling. Like God never gives you something for yourself. If God has taught you something, if God has brought you through an experience, if God has given you a talent or skill, you're not supposed to keep it to yourself. And this online space, this idea of creating a course just makes sense. It just makes that's just the platform that you can send that out, that you can that God can use to reach the masses. And so to contextualize this, one of the things that I'm most that fulfills me the most about this thing is my friend Mark, who we took on as a client, and I knew he had this passion. So it's kind of, like an expertise, a passion, or walk through an experience, knowledge, the center of genius, the zone of genius that you may have to help others do the same thing. So Mark, 5 years ago, was enslaved in pornography addiction, and he was married, had kids, even involved in ministry, but this thing just had grasp on his life, and it was obviously really painful. But he has been 5 years sober, and his story is very powerful, and he's told it a lot. And so what we've done is partnered with him, and in literally just a month, like you think it takes a long time to build a course, he actually didn't even build the course. He pre-sold his course. Within 3 weeks, he had people, like, he's inspired a lot of people about, breaking free from pornography. But what he's told me with this, he's like, I've inspired people, but this is the first time I've seen people transformed, like actually like things are happening. And so he has 18 people that paid him money to say, will you help me get rid of this problem in my life? Will you help me get out of pornography addiction too? And so he's launched this course, and he's walking through it with these guys. And just yesterday we were talking to him on our call, and he's like, dude, he's almost in tears just talking about how this guy has known pornography since he was a child, brought it into his marriage. And for the first time, he's able to look his wife in the eyes and be like, I didn't look at porn this week.
Wow.
And so that's just one example of it. But ultimately, the reason why it's so important is because God's purpose for you, God's calling on your life, is never to keep what you have been given, knowledge, experience, passion. You're never supposed to keep that for yourself. And the online course method is not the only way you can do it, but it is a prime opportunity to maximize that and maximize that impact for people's lives. Like, that is what fills me up, bro. Like, as you could tell, I'm getting passionate.
I can tell you get fired up.
Because lives are being changed.
Yep.
I mean, that's what fills us up way more than any money in the bank, is knowing that, like, man, what I did made a difference in someone's life. Like, there's no money that can replace that. And it's like in your lane, it's like, man, this is something that God's given me, and you're supposed to give it to somebody else and help someone else. That's what it's all about. So that's why I think it's such a great platform. It's such a great avenue to walk out your calling.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I love everything you just said. So tell me, when someone is going to create a course, what do they usually struggle with?
They usually struggle with imposters. It's always mindset. Like I was saying, imposter syndrome is big. It's like, man, I can't help anybody. I don't know if I could do this. And maybe even a bigger mindset block would be analysis paralysis. They're so overwhelmed with, am I doing this right? And wanting to perfect it, perfectionism. And so it's a lot of mindset things. But then I think the method is of even building a course and then selling it. That's a big mistake in my mind, because there's a lot of assumption based with this. So what we encourage everybody to do is to pre-sell your course, and it's a beta version, and you're actually building your course as students are walking through your course or enrolled in your course. And it is not passive. Like a lot, see, that's one thing we have to specify when we think of a course. Some people just think it's completely passive, and eventually maybe it will get there, but it's not just record some videos over 3 months and build out the structure and then market it well, which can work. Like, I'm not saying it can't work, but the problem that I see with that is it's based on assumption. Like, you may have a clear knowledge of what they need, of what whoever needs, whoever this is for, but you're still building it on assumption. And so when you get to work more closely and have weekly calls, or whether that's group calls, or even like Mark's doing a lot of one-on-one calls, every one of those 18 guys, he has a 15-minute call with for accountability purposes, but also he's leaning in and seeing man, what is being most helpful for him. It's that learning, that walking through them. It's a beta price. But also he's learning so much more, so he finds what works and what doesn't work, and what could be, trimmed out, and then what he can lean into more to make it more effective. And so the problem that I see often is people spend months perfecting their course, and then they try to market it, and that's actually not meeting a need, because that was an assumption. They didn't actually like start serving people and listen. There was all the course was based off of assumption, which may be like true, but it's based on like if Mark just created the course for him and it was all based on his experience. There's a lot of principles that are still meeting, but he's got to find out what their needs are. And yeah, so I think I'm saying it. I've said it enough. I think you guys get it. That yeah, you don't base it on assumption. Just go out and make it happen.
So talk about the difference between hiring someone to help you create a course or trying to do it yourself.
Man, I mean, I believe we're never nothing great is done alone. Like nobody if you want to go fast, that's what they say when you plant a church. Mm-hmm. If you want to go fast, do it alone. But if you want to go far, do it together. Mm-hmm. And the body of Christ is like here because we're all like balance each other out and we use each other's gifts and we need each other. So that's like a main thing, belief behind launching the 210 tribe and being a community that lifts one another's up and prays for each other and encourages each other. But yeah, just doing it alone is rough, man. I think the biggest thing is like that feedback aspect. Like with our clients, the biggest thing that they love is just knowing that they're doing the right thing. So like, again, like I'm a really practical guy. So like, what is the biggest so like working backwards, what is the biggest factor, the biggest like measurable thing that leads to results? It's taking action, right? It's like nothing, like results don't happen without like taking action, and consistently taking action. Like that's really the factor. So like take that back, but like what does it take to take consistent action? Well, I believe it takes clarity and confidence, being super clear, being super confident in what to do, because a lot of people want to launch a course, but then they second guess and they start taking some action, but then they're second guessing themselves and then they stop taking the action, which stops getting the results. And that may be because they actually were on the right path. But what we do and what we feel called to do is to encourage and help clarify and help build that confidence that results in taking consistent action, which results in lives change and making an impact. And so I think the biggest mistake, the biggest reason why to do it with somebody is because you won't have that clarity, you won't have that confidence. Just that feedback aspect. So many of our clients just send us like, hey, here's my game plan for this. This is how this went. And we're like, hey, great job. You can tweak this. And just having someone to do that is a game changer. So whoever you find, like, I just emphasize the need for a coach in like whatever you're doing. Like regardless of, you find someone that lines up with your values and that like has your best interest in mind, and you pay them money. Like, I'm just being real. Like, you need to invest in coaching. Like I would, if you were an entrepreneur wanting to go far, then invest in coaching. If you just want to go fast, then do it yourself.
You don't always go fast either. Sometimes you
yeah, that's true.
If you're trying to do it yourself. So,
yeah.
So does course creation work for just about any niche, even like a super niche?
That is a great question. So, which I'm pretty sure I've said that on every single question you've asked me. I haven't found one it doesn't work on.
Okay.
I mean, you can be like there is a potential you can niche down to like people in, South America that are 35 years old that don't, or I don't know, you like make this crazy super niche and there's like literally 4 people on the planet that right. applies to.
Like a certain skill, like only 4 people know.
Yeah. I mean, so there's also, so I guess I'd say there's a way you can niche down too much, like that's possible.
Yeah.
But I would say usually the fault is on being too broad, not being too specific. And even when so like our like a belief we have is, like, I'm sure you're in the entrepreneurial world, probably everybody watching this knows the value of specificity and niching down. And because, you know, like what we've said and what you've probably heard often is like business at its simplest form is solving a specific problem for a specific person.
Mhm.
And one of the things we really lean into is niching down and what that means. And we like walk through them with some worksheets that's probably, you know, you can find other places too, but we like walk them through this process of finding that specific person and what that person likes, and not just like their demographics, but their psychographics, like what do they like? How do they feel about this? What are their desires? What are their mistakes? What are their myths that they believe? What are their roadblocks to where they want to go? And if you specify like those things really well, it'll come out in how you market it. It'll come out in how you create your course. And you'll say no to some people. You'll say no to, but you're saying a stronger yes to those people. So to answer your question, I haven't found one that's too super niche down that doesn't work.
Okay. Now, since we are a marketing agency, I have some marketing related questions for you.
Oh, cool.
So once a course is created, what do you think is the best way to market it?
Well, I don't know if there's a best way, but the way we choose, I mean, so many things are based on assumption again, but what we have seen, like our strategy that we encourage all of our clients to do is, and especially at the beginning, when we're starting, is all organic. And that's coming from your, like, I just mentioned, I just started talking marketing. Like, you are super specific on the problem and the people.
Mhm.
Who are you solving, or what problem are you solving? Like, exactly, like grow your business. That's too big. Like a
Mhm.
problem you're solving for a specific person, like an entrepreneur, that's too big. Like everybody, you're not Tony Robbins. Like no one's going to pay you
Right.
money
Right.
to do that, to solve a very broad problem. And so what the best way to what we encourage people to do is like, you have to start with that, and you have to be crystal clear. Like, remember that clarity and the confidence, build that, and clarity and confidence in the people, the problem. But then also we psych them up on this strategy, which is organic, which means they're helping people. And all this is the easiest way to describe that organic process is you help people for free. Like Mark, you know, his problem he was solving was guys that are addicted to pornography, that weren't able to look their wife in the eyes, you know, that got uncomfortable when they see their wife pick up his phone. You know, like that's the problem. And so we just told him, dude, just help a ton of people for free. Give them so much value through your organic posts. And sometimes, you know, there are like the challenge method, you know, so we don't just like say has to put all your eggs in one basket, but this idea of providing value for free, just helping people a ton. And then they lean in and be like, whoa, like this was absolutely helpful. I got value out of this. I wonder what's going to happen if I pay for this guy's help. I'm going to, like, I was pornography free for 3 days when I did this thing, but like, what if maybe I could be pornography free for the rest of my life? And they lean in, and that's what's happening. So that's ultimately like what we've seen work best is like via social media, their personal accounts, just like serve people, talk to their pain points, talk to like be real, be raw, and even have conversations with people. A lot of times the strategy is like, hey, send me a DM, like especially for pornography, that it's a painful, like potentially embarrassing thing. They're not going to be like, oh yeah, I'm addicted to porn too, like on a public.
Right.
So it's been just like, that's been the thing. We just tell people, hey, just serve people, just help them. Like, and then income follows impact, where we say like, you know, income is the applause of service. And when you truly serve people and you truly do this, that's also part, as you're having these free conversations and giving people help for free, you're also understanding and clarifying, you know, the people in the problem as well.
Awesome. So what would you say has been your biggest marketing struggle?
Marketing struggle. Oh yeah, man. Like I said, I knew very little coming into this, but my business partner knows a ton. He's been a freelance entrepreneur in marketing and graphic design for 8 years. So, man, my biggest struggle, I think it's, I think something that I've recently overcome. I felt I would, with specifically talking about a niche, because like I explained to you, the marketing program. So we're not like paying for Facebook ads or any kind of that, any of that marketing. But one of the struggles I had was feeling trapped in a niche. I don't know if anybody out there is related to that, but like feeling like, okay, once I pick this, but what if it's not the right one? And again, analysis paralysis. You're like, so you don't do anything with it. But then I was finally like, someone told me, he's like, actually the coach I pay for, like I have a coach that we're paying for to coach me and my business partner. And he was like, dude, just because it'll be a continuing process refining your niche, and don't feel like you're stuck in it. Like you can change, you can change it, like evaluate it. It's not like you're stuck. So I think that was a big struggle for me, is that I was going to feel trapped in my niche, and just, freeing yourself up and just going for it. And from a Christian perspective, I think a lot of people pray, and which is good. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but our expectation is for God to be like, I want this to be your niche, Loren. Like we want the writing in the sky or something. But I think God sometimes, like, this is gonna sound, someone's gonna take this the wrong way, but sometimes I think God doesn't care. I think what God is saying is like, pick one. Like I've given you a mind. I've given you like a discerning heart. And like, if you have peace about it, like just pick one and go for it. So avoid that'd be my struggle that I've had and even continue to have. And my encouragement to other people is like, just don't spend so much time, trying to figure out which one's the right one. And the reality is you could probably kill it in multiple niches, but the best practice, what we recommend, is you pick one. You be super specific and you help solve that problem.
Okay, so last question. When it comes to marketing your business, all kinds of platforms pop up on the radar, and Clubhouse is kind of that thing right now. So what is your perspective on jumping on the latest platform to market your business?
Well, I'm still on MySpace, so I mainly put all my eggs in that. I have, there's a big problem I see with people is shiny object syndrome, which, has been defined as like the newest, greatest thing. They're just jumping, and there's not consistency. So I would caution with that of like, man, don't give up on the plan you already have. But I do know that like at the beginning phase of a platform is the opportunity to get ahead. Kind of I was talking about like the curve of like any industry. Like, and if you get in the beginning or earlier on, you have the opportunity to, have more leverage. So I think there's value in that too. So I would say if somebody's like already established and wanting to branch out, I think that's great. But I would just caution not to have that like shiny object syndrome and take it away from, what you're currently doing. I actually did a Clubhouse yesterday because I was showing my friend it, and then we just jumped on. I tried to create a clickbait like room title, and it just said, "Does God hate me?" And a few of our friends joined, and we were just like said, "Hey, we were just messing around trying to see how this works." So I don't know, man. Like, I'm sure people are leveraging that and it's beneficial. I would just, like I said, caution you not to just stop what you're doing, because you might be on the edge, like whatever method you're going at, the principle of focus is not valued enough. And, sometimes you should just like, hey, I'm going to keep on going. And if you already have something that you feel like you do have the time to like diversify and, try a new method, and you already have something working, but if you're still working on building up like traction in terms of like reaching people and being successful with your marketing, I would say like mainly just stay focused on what you're doing.
I totally agree with you. You can get too many things going on and not focused. So yeah. It's been a pleasure having you. Thank you for being on the Entrepreneur Journey. Any last things that you want to add?
Did I talk too much? Like I like to talk, so I don't know
No,
if I like. Okay.
no. You delivered so much value.
Oh, awesome, man,
Thank
dude.
you. Thank you so much.
This was a joy, bro. Like I love this kind of stuff. So I really appreciate you reaching out and inviting me to be on this.